Kendra Williams pushed her wheelchair down Cedar Ridge High-S corridors 6 months after recovering from the car accident that had altered everything, being the new black girl. At the majority-white school, she anticipated stares, but not the vicious bullying that ensued. When Dylan Reeves and his cohorts pinned her in the parking lot, they pulled her out of the chair and left her defenseless on the pavement while they drove in circles, assuming there would be no repercussions 6 months ago. Everything had been other than the car accident lingered in her mind from time to time when least expected. At the sound of the brakes, the feeling of being weightless, then nothingness until she awoke in the hospital with her parents' anxious faces above her. Kendra's grip on her wheels grew tighter, but she continued to move, acting like she hadn't heard she'd become accustomed to being stared at for all the wrong reasons since the accident. But it still hurt to think she was born like that, or what probably car accident or something. My mom said her dad works security, now at some office building. The voices were 3 boys standing against a line of lockers, and in spite of herself, Kendra looked over the tallest, and an air of smirking, as if he found everything around him hilarious. His Letterman jacket made him stand out as football-likely varsity, based on the way the younger students stayed out of his way. "Dylan, come on, dude, be a jerk," one of his friends said, though his tone implied he didn't actually mean it. "What I am just asking questions." Connor and S called being inquisitive about our new classmate. Dylan's tone held that certain chair around, so she faced them, her dark eyes flashing with anger under control. "My father has never had a drink in his whole life. Hey, sorry about that. We didn't mean anything by it, just, trying to navigate the new dynamics around here." He spread his hands in a gesture that was likely intended to appear apologetic, but actually came off as condescending. "I am Dylan, by the way. This is Tyler, and Connor. Welcome to Cedar Ridge," she said precisely, her voice cutting through theirs. "And I can hear everything you're saying." The doctors had described about her spinal injury in careful clinical terms that in some way made the reality more palatable and more difficult at the same time. Arts training the way that people spoke immediately prior to attempting to pull something off. She got to her locker and started spinning the combination, acutely aware of their ongoing discussion aside. Dylan persisted, his voice falling just far enough to sound like he was in a conspiracy, but still fully audible. "I bet she gets all sorts of special privileges. Now probably gets extra time on exams. First dibs on parking spaces. Teachers going easy on her out of sympathy for her. Dude." "Excuse me, sorry," she whispered, as a cluster of students stood in her way, too engrossed in their discussion to see her attempting to pass through. They shuffled. But what Dylan did not realize was that prior to her accident, Kendra, absorbing the social scene of her new school, Cedar Ridge, wasn't like her previous school in Richmond, bigger, wider, with hallways that appeared to be designed for displaying the athletic trophies that covered every available surface space. Students navigated in decidedly demarcated groups, the athletes in their Letterman sweaters, the theater types huddled near bulletin boards, the academic overachievers already lost in textbooks, despite the fact that it was only the second week of school. She had been a martial arts prodigy who was trained by her father, a retired Army combat instructor, and in no time the bullies would get a very expensive and painful lesson. Before we proceed, comment where in the world are you watching from, and do not forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's tale is one you do not want to miss. The rubber wheels of the wheelchair squeaked against the highly polished linoleum as Kendra Williams moved through the busy hallway of Cedar Ridge High School, 6 months ago, she would have been walking these corridors on her own 2 feet, probably running late to first period, like half the other kids hurrying back some aside with apologetic distractedness, and Kendra pushed onto her locker. Overheard someone say behind her, not quite quiet enough, the new girl in the wheelchair. One had the confident air of a person who never questioned his position in life, broad shoulders, immaculately styled brown hair brand of pretended innocence that Kendra saw from years of Marshall. "That messed up," the third boy said, but he was laughing. "What messed up, Tyler? I am just saying, if I had to be in a wheelchair, I'd totally milk it for everything. It was worth get out of gym class, skip assemblies because of accessibility issues, maybe even get into college easier because of diversity quotas." Kendra's jaw clenched as she removed her chemistry textbook from her locker. These were the types of comments that made her want to stand up and walk over there and tell them exactly what she thought of their assumptions. But she couldn't stand up, and that was the entire point of their careless cruelty, I heard. Her family had moved here because her dad had lost his job, Connor said, like perhaps he was drunk driving when they had the accident, or whatever that was. Kendra swiveled her. The 3 boys appeared to be actually shocked. She said something. Dylan got there first, that smirk broadening on his face. "Thanks," Kendra replied curtly without giving her name. In exchange, "So what happened?" Tyler inquired with the blunt inquisitiveness of a person who never picked up on the fact that some questions ought be posed. "I mean, if you don't mind telling us." Kendra looked at him for a good minute. Considering her choices, she could tell them it wasn't any of their concern. She could simply ignore them. "If you ever need something, just give us a call. We're always glad to assist." The bell had sounded, announcing first period, and the hallway started to thin out. Kendra observed the 3 boys stroll down toward the main stairs, their posture exuding the sort of relaxed confidence that resulted from never having to think twice about accessibility or acceptance. She suspected that she'd be seeing a lot of them, and others were just the harsh reality of living in a world that had not been designed with her in mind. They were approaching the main staircase when Dylan's voice floated down from the 2nd floor landing. "Heads up, incoming wheelchair traffic, be sure you're not blocking the ramp." Kendra glared up to see Dylan, Tyler, and Connor making their way down the stairs. Dylan's remark had been loud enough for half the hall to hear, said in that same phony helpful voice he'd employed during their first meeting. "Thanks for the public service 3 weeks into the semester." Kendra had built the term accidents hung in the air with careful weight. Tyler snickered, and Connor looked awkward, but remained silent. "You know what?" Or she could provide them with just enough truth to silence them. "Car accident," she stated matter-of-factly. 6 months ago. "That sucks," Connor offered, but his tone indicated he was already losing interest. Kendra said softly, "In fact, I think your friend here is right." Dylan said, stepping to, took the long route to classes that had ramp entrances and had memorized which bathrooms were actually wheelchair accessible rather than the ones that technically complied, but were effectively inoperable. "I still can't believe they placed the accessible bathroom on the 3rd floor when all your classes are on the first 2 floors. Zoe Martinez said, pushing beside Kendra's wheelchair. As they went to lunch, Zoe had transferred from California. Dylan concurred, but something that's not the point. You shouldn't have to plan your whole day around mundane human needs, because this campus was built by individuals who never thought about disabled students wanting to go there. And his face had altered, as if he was storing this information for future use. Well, routine that accommodated Cedar Ridge's weaknesses. She came in early to beat the crowd same week. as Kendra and their being outsiders together had turned readily into true friendship. It's okay, Kendra said, although they both knew it wasn't. I've gotten good at thinking ahead. Kendra liked Zoe's wrath on her behalf, but she'd learned to choose her battles. Some things were worth fighting for. Announcement. Zoe reclaimed, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Just making sure everyone is safe, Dylan said as they reached the stairs. Bottom, don't want any accidents. Zoe began to move toward them, but Kendra touched her arm. It's not worth it. Blocked their way to the cafeteria, standing up for right. And all that very noble move, Kendra said matter-of-factly. Of course. Wouldn't want to get accused of discrimination or anything. Dylan moved out of the way with over-the-top politeness, but Tyler placed himself squarely in front of Kendra's wheelchair. Oops, sorry, didn't notice you there, Tyler said, feigning innocence, as Kendra was forced to brake suddenly. Probably should get one of those little flags they place on bicycles. Connor contributed at this point, joining in, for and say what that they re cruel to me, that they make statements that hurt my feelings, that they Ray targeting you on purpose because of your disability. Prove it. Zoe went silent. Parents converted garage going through range of motion exercises. Teeth as she forced one particularly difficult movement. I want to do more often, Kendra. We've discussed this. Recovery is not to make you want to triple your physical therapy sessions. Before Kendra could answer, the garage door creaked open, and Marcus Williams walked in, still in his security uniform from work. He scanned the room with the practiced eye of a man who spent years interpreting body language and tension levels. How's our patient today? He asked, but his tone implied he'd already caught the undertones of frustration. A race pushing too hard too fast really can set you back. I am not pushing too hard. I am pushing as hard as I must. Read her daughter's face, seeing the stubborn determination that had carried Kendra through months of exhausting rehabilitation. Is something going on at school? Kendra stalled. Her parents had enough to with her mother. Nia Williams had outfitted the area as a professional-level physical therapy facility, complete with parallel bars, resistance bands, and floor mats. Your flexibility is increasing, Nia noted, as Kendra went through a series of stretches intended to keep muscle tone and avoid contra-hours. How are you? Because they both knew the truth. The boys were cautious, always walking the line between outright bullying and things that could be written off as teenager inconsideration. Visibility. Kendra could sense the familiar sear of held anger smoldering in her chest. These were not random acts of carelessness. They were premeditated maneuvers, calculated to embarrass her, while keeping plausible deniability. If she complained, they could say it was all a case of misunderstandings. Tyler stepped aside. Zoe spat, her tone warning. What, I am just standing here. Tyler opened his arms wide. It's a free country. I can stand where I want not. If you're intentionally blocking someone's path, Kendra said, her tone calm but for the anger seething underneath. Intentionally, that's a pretty serious charge. You have any evidence of that? The question was rhetorical, and they all knew it in the lack of witnesses willing to come forward or grown-ups looking in their direction. It was her word against theirs, and, in the Cedar Ridge high pecking order, her word was worth much. Tyler finally moved out, but not before dragging out the scene long enough to make his point. As they made their way towards the cafeteria, Kendra could hear the three boys laughing behind her. This is ridiculous, Zoe said, once they were past of hearing distance. You must report them for what, hanging out in a hallway, for harassment, for making things unpleasant, for being total jerks. Kendra made her way through the cafeteria doors, looking for an available table. It was high-tech cruelty, the sort that produced no outward bruises, and little in the way of witnesses who were willing to speak up. That afternoon, Kendra sat in her receiving. About the standing exercises, better, stronger, Kendra gritted her worry about, without adding teenage drama to their agenda. Just the usual stuff: new school, new people. The usual stuff doesn't end in the room, decided, Nia said. Maybe to decided. Marcus kneeled down next to Kendra's mat, his presence instantly grounding. You want to tell me what's really happening? Kendra glanced from her parents, her mother's worried professionalism, her father's gentle strength, and felt the pressure of their love and protection. They'd already given up so much for her recovery, moving to a new city, adjusting their careers, reorganizing their whole lives around her needs. Just some kids at school, she said at last. Nothing I see ain't handle. Marcus nodded slowly. You know, handling something doesn't always mean handling it alone. I know gives us another group project. I'm going to lose it, Zoe was saying. As they walked up to Zoe's car, like I am not hiding from them anymore, they made their way to the car. Connor added his own confidence building with his friend's approval. Zip it, Zoe snapped, standing between Kendra and the boys' wheelchair. I've always wondered what it's like to ride in one of those things. Don't even think about it, Zoe said. But Dylan was already reaching for the handles of the wheelchair. Come on. Just for a second. I bet it's like a really slow go-kart. Get your hands off my chair, Kendra said. From the passenger seat, her voice deadly quiet. Relax. I am not going to break it. Just want to see how it works. Dylan pulled the wheelchair back from the car. Despite the attempts of Zoe to stop him, Tyler and Connor moved to stand in Zoe's way to prevent her from interfering, while Dylan settled into, while still assisting with the wheelchair. How aggressive much, Dylan said, pushing away from the truck. We're just enjoying the show. That's when Kendra realized they weren't discussing anymore. They were walking over, all three of them, with the loose-limbed swagger of people who'd never had true consequences for what they'd done. You know what, Dylan said, pulling up to the car just. But as Kendra started transferring from her wheelchair into the passenger seat, a process that involved her sliding from the chair onto the car seat, while Zoe folded up Kendra's wheelchair. Dylan's voice interrupted the parking lot. Hey, look at that daily gymnastics show, Tyler laughed. Better than cable TV. Kendra attempted to tune them out, concentrating on the transfer. I understand that cooperation is key, but when the other half of the class uses it as a reason to do nothing, while the other does everything, Zoe, Kendra cut in, her voice strained. She'd seen Dylan, Tyler, and Connor leaning against a parked pickup truck, observing their approach with the feline interest of cats seeing a wounded bird. Zoe trailed after her. But some fights are mine to fight, and some fights are worth fighting smart instead of hard. Kendra met her with constant loud remarks about disability benefits in close proximity and synchronizing their approaches to maximize incompatibility for Kendra's daily mobility. The last straw occurred on a drizzly Tuesday afternoon as Kendra and Zoe approached the student parking lot. Following school, Kendra was keen to get home. Her physical therapy session earlier that morning had been especially productive, and she was more than ready to keep working with her father. On the father's eyes, understanding passing between them, Marcus had taught her that strength came in many forms, and sometimes the strongest thing you could do was wait for the right moment to act. Can we work on the standing exercises? She asked. Marcus smiled. Let's see what you've got. By November, the harassment had escalated from inconvenient encounters to intentionally target. Dylan's group had fallen into a habit of inadvertently obstructing accessible routes, strengthening exercises that were slowly restoring her core stability I swear if Mer Peterson stare, and immediately realized maybe we should head back inside. Wait for them to depart, no Kendra's jaw. Firm with resolve process, but their commentary went on wonder if she receives extra credit for level of difficulty while Zoe was folding Kendra. Kendra's wheelchair, oh wow. This is actually pretty comfortable. No wonder you're in no hurry to get out of it. You need to stop, Kendra said, her hands clenched into fists from her position, and joking about it like it was a show. Some looked uneasy, but did nothing to assist. Kendra seethed in angry helplessness as Dylan did wheelies in her chair, whooping every time he could get the front wheels off the ground, the image of him using her mobility device like a toy while she sat in the car. She was completely helpless to intervene, physically stop what I am just testing out the equipment, making sure it is safe for public use. Dylan began wheeling around the parking lot in wide circles, Tyler and Connor jogging alongside him like an entourage. This is actually pretty fun. Kendra stranded in the passenger seat and Zoe standing helplessly at the curb. Other students who had witnessed the whole scene quickly spread out, clearly not wanting any connection to what had gone on. Zoe reached for Kendra's wheelchair, her hands trembling with rage as she examined it for damage. Those total jerks were reporting this now, to who Kendra asked bitterly. The administration that has been turning a blind eye to everything else they've done to someone, anyone. This can't be legal. But as they drove home in silence, both girls knew the truth. Without adult witnesses or overt evidence of intent to hurt, it would be considered teenage horseplay gone too far. The boys would say they were just joking, never meaning to hurt anyone. Sorry if feelings got hurt that night. Kendra lay awake, glaring at the ceiling, replaying every second of the parking lot incident, the laughter, the phones capturing her humiliation, the benign cruelty masquerading as humor. Something basic had changed inside her. The careful patience she kept, the strategic silence, hoping things would get better on their own, all of it reduced to ash by the vision of Dylan pushing her wheelchair around like a carnival attraction. She considered her father's advice to fight smart, not hard. Perhaps it was time to do both. The next morning, Kendra sat opposite Vice Principal Johnson in his tight office, observing him sorting through papers with the absent-minded demeanor of a man who'd already determined how this conversation was going to go. So you're telling me these boys stole your wheelchair? Of rubber tires on pavement, a soundtrack of utter humiliation. Please. Kendra had spat out the word as soon as she'd spoken it, but was desperate to restore her chair. I need it to move around. Of course you do, Dylan sneered, at last extracting himself from the wheelchair, but instead of taking it back, he placed it 20 feet away from the car. There, you're good as new, bring it here. Zoe snapped. What, you can't walk 20 feet? Oh, Dylan called out. Tyler, you've got to try this. Dylan, give it back, Zoe demanded, but Tyler stepped in front of her. Yes, just goofing off. Dude, be such a buskill. The scene was drawing other students' attention as they loaded into their cars, but rather than stepping in to stop him, they pulled out their phones to video. Some of them were laughing, strapped in the car, and unable to do anything about it. Was even more humiliating than any of their past harassment. Look, I am doing tricks, said Dylan, trying to spin the wheelchair in a tight circle. The chair tipped precariously, almost falling before he regained his balance. You're going to break it, Kendra cried, her composure at last breaking. What, this thing is built like a tank, probably costs more than my car, right? Insurance must be paying for all sorts of fancy enhancements. Tyler had taken his turn at the chair and was now racing Connor in circles of the parking lot. the laughter of their own, combined with the screech way Dylan's smile spread, I guess. You can't. They left walking away, laughing, abandoning, and drove around in it, Johnson asked, not glancing up from his notes. Yes, for some minutes, while other students recorded it, and this occurred in the parking lot, after school, technically after school. But still on school grounds. No, I am sure they didn't intend to do any actual harm. Sometimes kids do consider how their actions may impact others. They actively took my mobility device. What had been one of the most degrading experiences of her life? What if they ripped off someone's glasses and tossed them about, or stolen someone's hearing aid? That's different. How Johnson's awkward silence dragged on long enough to respond to her question. Different. Dylan lapped up the attention, but something bothered him about the expression on Kendra's face during the parking lot confrontation, not the enraged helplessness he anticipated, but something harder, more calculating. Think she'll turn us in? Connor asked, a note of anxiety creeping into his tone. To who? Johnson. Dylan snorted. My dad goes golfing with the superintendent anyway. It's not like we really hurt her or anything. We were just messing around still. Maybe because those sorts of things happen to regular students, and this happened to the disabled girl, who should really just be thankful she'd even been permitted to go to Cedar Ridge at all. I'll speak to the boys, he said, eventually see that they realize. Besides, what is she going to do about it? Chase us around? The group laughed, but Dylan saw a few kids near the edge of the crowd, looking uneasy. Good, let them squirm. It reminded everyone where the power really lay at school. That afternoon, Kendra came home to find both her parents sitting in the living room, their faces grim. How did the meeting with the vice principal go? Nia asked. About as well as expected, Kendra, and used it as a form of entertainment. When I could not intervene, I get upset, but without any adults present for this supposed incident. It comes down to, he said, Marcus asked, that boys will be boys. That it was teenage behavior that got out of control. That he'd have words with them. A word. Nia echoed, her tone flat with incredulity. That's it? Kendra nodded, observing her father's jaw clench and held fury. Marcus Williams had spent his time in the military defending people who couldn't defend themselves, and the idea of officials failing, as Tyler and Connor described the day before to an audience of more and more listeners. You should have seen her face. Tyler was saying like she couldn't believe we were doing it. She said, and honestly, taking someone's wheelchair for a few minutes hardly counts as harassment. Kendra stared at him, registering the nonchalance. Johnson did at last glance at her, his face indicating mild frustration at having to work through teen drama. Miss Williams, I know that it can be difficult to adjust to a new setting, especially under your conditions, but what you're relating sounds like normal teen behavior that got a little out of control. Normal teenage behavior. Kendra's voice did not waver, but her knuckles were white where they clenched her wheelchair armrests. Boys being boys, you dismissal of pranks tend to go too far. Sometimes a word. Yes, I think that should explain things pretty well. In the meantime, 3 hallways down, Dylan leaned against his locker. The highlight was when Dylan began doing wheelies. Connor continued, I thought she was going to cry. Should cool it for a bit. Tyler had suggested cool it. We're just getting started. You see how easy it is to get under her skin. Moved from wheelchair to couch, observing how her parents shared a glance that held whole conversations. What did he say? In that task had hurt him physically. To accept this is not acceptable, he declared at last. We're going over Johnson's head, to who it was made clear to him that without adult witnesses, it's my word against theirs, and theirs apparently carries more force. Then we write down everything Nia said, entering problem-solving mode every incident, every interaction. We create a pattern. That can't be ignored, Mom. They're not dimwits. They know precisely how far they can go without going past any official boundaries. Then perhaps it is time to consider alternative options. Her mother preferred to work through the system, to document and report, and hope one day justice would win out. Her father recognized that sometimes the system was the issue, and justice needed to be taken. I am not rushing anything, Kendra answered through clenched teeth, sustaining her plank position in spite of the shaking in her arms. I am just finished accepting constraints, Marcus observed from the doorway, seeing the change in his daughter's attitude. It was the same one he'd seen in soldiers, who no longer hoped for rescue, but began making plans for escape. Show me the standing. Not given, I need to think, Kendra said at last. That evening, she lay beating the vice principal's flippant tone, the boy's laughter ringing in the parking. My body needs to remember what it can do. Kendra moved to the parallel bars, gripping the bars with white knuckles. How long can I hold weight bearing now? Around 2 minutes. 3 minutes. And was primarily composed of Johnson telling him that pranks were to be kept in good fun, essentially a free pass. Dylan informed Tyler and Connor as they observed Kendra make her way through the busy hallway during lunchtime change. As long as we don't leave any marks, we're golden. They had created a new game within the last 2 weeks. Strategic positioning, one of them. But that's huge progress. From I want to get to 5 minutes by Christmas. Nia and Marcus looked at each other. Christmas was 6 weeks away. That could be aggressive to move or take a different route. When she politely asked them, they'd agree with over-the-top politeness. When she attempted other routes, they'd tag along and do it all over again. It's like herding sheep, Tyler said to himself with contentment. Today Connor chose to take it up a notch. Nia said cautiously, everything about this situation is aggressive. While love the phones, recording her shame for social media entertainment, but mixed. Marcus said under his breath, like developed from years of martial arts training. Her father was correct about one thing. She'd been thinking like a victim, expecting rescue that was arriving. Perhaps it was time to get back to thinking like a fighter again. The shift in Kendra's training schedule was subtle, but noteworthy. Where previously she'd gone at her physical therapy with resolved hope, now she attacked every exercise with concentrated ferocity that came perilously close to fierce easy. Nia warned as Kendra bulldogged, what moving again, fleeing. Every time someone complicates my life, such as standing up to the words hung there between them. Nia gave her husband a warning glance, but Marcus went on. I am not saying violence. I am saying refusing to be a victim of setting them straight, that actions have consequences, even when the system fails to make them happen. Marcus, Nia warned, what she has every right to defend herself. We've been training her to get her strength back. Perhaps it's time she remembered what that strength is for. Kendra gazed between her parents, noticing the essential chasm in their methods. Along with the rage was something else, a cold, concentrated intensity that struck her as similar to the mindset she her third series of core strengthening exercises. That morning, your muscles take time to rebuild. You can't rush it. Progression again, Kendra explained after finishing her floor work. Kendra, we just did that yesterday. Your body needs. Kendra pushed her physical limits at home. The boys at school were getting bolder in their belief that they could get away with anything. Dylan's conversation with Vice Principal Johnson had taken precisely would position themselves in Kendra's direct path at bottleneck areas in the hallway and require her to request them. As Kendra wheeled toward the cafeteria entrance, he stood in the wheelchair-accessible doorway and feigned intense attention to his phone. "Excuse me," Kendra said. Connor looked up in simulated surprise. "Oh, sorry, didn't see you there." He moved aside, but only enough that Kendra had to duck through the opening between him and the door frame as she wheeled by him, and Tyler appeared on Connor's sides, the pack instinct kicking in with the first sign of their member being challenged. "Problem here?" Dylan asked, though his tone indicated he was wishing for one. "No problem," Kendra responded slowly, "just making an observation about individuals who confuse cruelty with courage. Feel to punch down rather than up. You threatening us?" Connor asked, his voice rising. "Threatening you?" Kendra tilted her head, as if considering the potentiality. "What could I possibly do to threaten you? I am just a girl in a wheelchair." "Right." The question lingered in the air with more significance than its words. Miss Rodriguez observed the trend in her 5th period English class. She'd taught for 12 years and had an observational eye for the subtle interactions that the adults tended to overlook. The manner in which specific students stood in order to intimidate others, the calculated timing of disruptions, the psychological battles teenagers conducted with surgical accuracy. Today, she observed, Tyler should have had. Dylan felt an uncomfortable prickle of tension, though he couldn't exactly say why. "That's right," he said, cautious. Tyler said, drawing closer to her wheelchair. "You're getting to sound unthankful for all the assistance we've been providing you here." "Round assistance?" Kendra's laugh was icy with incredulity. "I'll remember everything," she said softly. "Every word, every action, every consequence." "Memory is funny that way. It has a habit of coming back when you least expect it." She wheeled away toward an empty table, leaving the 3 boys standing in the doorway with the unsettling feeling that they'd just lost an exchange they should have won easily. "What was that about?" Tyler muttered. Dylan shook his head. "But is that what you call it? We've been nothing." But he muttered loud enough for her to hear. "Maybe she'd get one of those backup beepers." Kendra halted her wheelchair and confronted him. "What did you say?" "Nothing, just." The book fell directly in front of her, so she had to stop and navigate around it, and Tyler played it cool, picking it up slowly. "Sorry about that," Tyler said, feigning innocence. "These things just have a mind of their own." Dylan and Connor giggled from nearby seats, and Miss Rodriguez clenched her jaw. She'd seen the same things happen over the past month. Always little, always credibly accidental, always aimed at the same. Thinking aloud regarding traffic safety, the cafeteria grew uncomfortably still, as other students could feel confrontation simmering. Kendra watched Connor's face, seeing the smug self-satisfaction barely hidden behind his innocent look. "You know what I think?" she asked, her voice ringing out across the new stillness. "I think you're a coward who only feels tough when he is bullying someone who he figures can't strike back." Connor's face flushed red. "What did you call me?" "You heard me, Dylan." "Accommodating," Dylan said, taking care that you have clear routes, looking out for your own safety, even experimenting with your equipment to ensure that it is functioning correctly. The cafeteria audience was building students, attracted by the rare sight of someone standing up to the favored sports figures. Some had their phones out, prepared to record whatever would occur next. "You're right," Kendra declared, surprising everyone by the sudden support. "You have been very educational. I've learned a lot observing you." Something in her voice caused Dylan to frown. "Yeah. Like what?" "Like how so much people will let you get away with when they think you're untouchable. Like how easy it is to confuse silence for weakness. Like how good it must finally so maybe remember that next time you want to run your mouth." Kendra smiled, and something about that smile made all three boys take an unconscious step backward. The discomfort remained for the first time since all this began. He wasn't sure if they were underestimating precisely what they were up against 3 days since the cafeteria incident. Purposely knock his textbook off his desk just as Kendra was rolling by to hand in her assignment student at the end of class. She caught up to Kendra as the other students were leaving. "Can I talk with you for a minute?" Kendra hesitated, weariness crossing her features. "Is there something wrong with my essay?" "No, your work is always good as ever. I was wondering if everything was okay with you here at Cedar Ridge." Kendra's guarded neutrality. "Your way." Kendra's hands froze on her wheelchair rim. "Sorry. I've been observing Kendra. The book incidents, the strategic placement, the remarks just loud enough to be heard. This is not normal adolescent conduct." For a second hope sprang in Kendra's eyes before it was drowned out. "Even if that were possible, what could you do about it?" Ms. Rodriguez saw the despair in that query. "I need to speak with you about the incident you talked to me about regarding some boys in your class." Ms. Rodriguez's stomach dropped. She hadn't submitted any report, yet she'd only been considering it. But her pause in responding gave Johnson the opening he needed. "I think there might be some misunderstanding about normal student interactions." Johnson's tone conveyed this was not a question. Kendra departed reluctantly, but not before locking eyes with Ms. Rodriguez in a look that implied she'd gone through this before. Once the door shut, Johnson's attitude changed to barely suppressed annoyance. "Maria, I want you to be extremely careful about the charges you're looking at. These are decent kids from high-profile families. Harassment charges could ruin their future." "What about Kendra's future? What about hers?" S face hardened. "And I am referring to 3 young men with promising futures who don't need to have their reputations ruined by hyperreaction to normal adolescent behavior." Ms. Rodriguez felt the familiar pressure of institutional politics, the unspoken message that her future employment may be contingent upon her willingness to look. He continued, glancing meaningfully at Kendra. "Sometimes what appears to be targeted behavior is really just teenage clumsiness that only the tone of someone who'd already attempted official avenues and found them inadequate. I could record what said it all to Ms. Rodriguez. It's fine, just the usual adjustment period. The usual adjustment period doesn't usually involve students intentionally doing in good fun." The venom in Kendra's tone confirmed Ms. Rodriguez's suspicions regarding how earlier reports had been treated. Perhaps, but at least there would be an adult on record witnessing anything. Kendra weighed the potential payoffs against the near certainty of escalation to come. What if it makes things worse? What if not doing anything makes things worse? Before Kendra could answer, the classroom door swung open and Vice Principal obstacles along. "I'd seen file a complaint, and then what they receive another talking to regarding keeping pranks." Johnson appeared, his expression already conveying irritation. "Ms. Rodriguez impacts one student." Ms. Rodriguez inquired, "Miss Williams, would you give us some privacy? Right to go to school without being systematically harassed. That's a bit melodramatic, isn't it? We're discussing normal teenage social interaction." "I am referring to intentional repeated harassment of a disabled student." Johnson. "The other way. So I should just forget what I am seeing. I am asking you to think about whether what you believe you're seeing is what's occurring occasionally. Our need to safeguard can cause us to perceive issues where there aren't any afterwards." That night, Kendra pushed herself harder than ever in her training session with her dad, his frustration fueling every movement, every calculated step through the parallel bars, a defiance of the hopelessness Others seemed bent on forcing upon her that 10 minutes of weight-bearing Marcus saw. He said softly, "Not this time, Kendra. These boys need to know their actions have repercussions, and since the school isn't going to give those repercussions to them." Kendra explained a talk Marcus broke down with the boys, and their parents emphasizing that this harassment ends today, and what comes afterward. Nia asked her therapist training coming in when they see Kendra tattled to her daddy. "They'll ratchet it up," Kendra explained flatly. "They'll make my life 10 times worse, and they'll be more careful to stay away from adult witnesses." "You will," Kendra turned to him, her face combining thanks with annoyance. "Dad, I appreciate you wanting to defend Mimi. I rebuilt my whole life from the ground up. I think I can deal with 3 insecure teenage boys." In spite of her words, Marcus could see the cost of this constant war in the tension around her eyes, the way she held her shoulders. "The boys. But this is something I need to do myself." "Why?" "Because you're attempting to prove by day that afternoon when Kendra was in her final class." Marcus sat in his truck in the Cedar Ridge parking lot. He'd been waiting for Kendra, as always, but catching Dylan, Tyler, and Connor walking toward their vehicles presented him with an opportunity he could not resist. He got out of the truck and walked toward them, his military bearing, immediately demanding their attention. "You boys are Dylan Reeves, Tyler Brooks, and Connor Walsh." He said it wasn't a question. "The 3 boys. You're independent, because if you fight my fights for me, I'll never learn to fight them for myself." Nia followed them into the kitchen, feeling the strain. "What are we talking about?" Color faded from Connor's face. Tyler fidgeted. Dylan attempted to keep his cool, but couldn't conceal the tension in his eyes. "I want to be crystal clear on something," Marcus went on, his voice steady, but with the force of absolute authority. "The harassment of my daughter ends now, today, forever, sir. I believe there may be misunderstanding." Dylan began. "No misunderstanding. Your balance is getting better too. It's not quite enough." Kendra's voice was strained with repressed fury. "I need to be stronger, quicker. This isn't all about physical strength anymore, is it?" Kendra caught her. "Not only isn't failing you, it's actively saving them. Looks that way. Then we quit relying on the system. Dad, dude, even think about it," Kendra said, not raising her eyes. "Think about whatever protective dad thing you're thinking of. I can see it in your face." Marcus watched his daughter, seeing not only her resolve, but her vulnerability underlying it. 6 months of piecing herself back together physically and emotionally, and these boys were methodically dismantling it. Father's eyes in the mirror, which graced one wall of their improvised gym. "A teacher attempted to assist me today, attempted to report what has been occurring." "That's good news." Johnson quashed her before she could even make a report. Said she was being dramatic, that the boys' futures were more valuable than keeping me safe. Marcus was silent for a long time, digesting what the implications are. "So the system, sometimes dads have to intervene." Marcus is thinking of a straightforward approach to our dilemma. Marcus sensed the familiar anger of a guardian whose hands were bound tighter than ever. "So I am supposed to just sit here and watch them bully you? You're supposed to have faith that you taught me how to deal with this. You're 17 years old. I am 17 years old, and I've lived through more than most grown-ups. I lived through a car wreck that could be killed." Weren't harassing her. They were wearing her down. They swapped glances, suddenly appearing several years younger and less sure. "Yes, sir," Dylan said hesitantly. "I'm Marcus Williams, Kendra's father." Marcus took a step closer, close enough so all years younger and less sure. "Yes, sir," Dylan said hesitantly. "I'm Marcus Williams, Kendra's father." Color faded from Connor's face. Tyler fidgeted. Dylan attempted to keep his cool, but couldn't conceal the tension in his eyes. to be able to meet his gaze. I know exactly what you've been doing, the wheelchair incident, the comments, the deliberate blocking in hallways, all of it. We were just Tyler started, you were just what having fun boys. Being boys. Marcus's voice had a perilous edge. Let me get something straight with you. My daughter is tougher than all three of you put together. She is piecing herself back together from a trauma that would have shattered lesser souls, and you think that qualifies her as a target for your amusement? Grounds. Tyler nodded slowly, his swagger returning. Yeah, and my dad's a lawyer. One phone call, and that guy would be charged with assault for just threatening us, plain and simple. Dylan ceased pacing and turned to address his friends. Yes, all tough talk, and no action has to be. Adults can't go around threatening kids, no matter how tough they feel they are. Connor shifted restlessly. That daddy-ass little scares speech did not work. Connor glanced over at his two friends, seeing the menacing glint in Dylan's eyes. What message? The kind that puts Princess in her place once and for all, impresses everyone at school about who is boss around here. In the meantime, back at the Williams home, Marcus sat opposite Kendra at dinner, the burden of his afternoon choice weighing between them. You spoke to them, didn't you? Kendra asked, not lifting her eyes from her plate. Marcus sighed. How did you know? I don't know, guys. Maybe we should just lay off for a bit. I mean, what is the point of messing with her anymore anyway? The point, Dylan said. The boys remained stock still, suddenly comprehending that this was a Tyler began. No, listen. You think I am going to let them get away with thinking they intimidated me? Let word get out at school that Kendra Williams' dad made Dylan Reeves back down. He shook his head, strongly. Not going down. Tyler leaned forward, catching. But there's only so much of being harassed day after day that a father can watch. Nia put down her fork. What did you say to them exactly? I made it absolutely clear that the harassment had to stop, that if it continued, there would be repercussions. Kendra finally looked up, her face Dylan's intensity. So what Ray you thinking? I am thinking it is time to stop playing games. No more clever stuff, no more careful pranks. That can be. I want to be crystal clear on something. Marcus went on, his voice steady, but with the force of absolute authority. The harassment of my daughter ends now, today, forever, sir. I believe there may be misunderstanding. Dylan began. No misunderstanding, Dylan exclaimed, his initial surprise giving way to outraging at us like some sort of wannabe tough guy military. He was really intense, Connor confessed, rubbing his arms unconsciously where goosebumps had erupted during the exchange. So he's intense. Big deal. What is he ever going to do? Beat up 3 high school kids? Dylan's speech increased in volume with every word. He'd be arrested before he. Marcus took a step closer. Close enough so all 3 boys had to crane their necks. The type of adult who might be charmed or manipulated here as what is going to occur. Marcus went on. You're going to leave my daughter alone entirely. No more jokes, no more remarks, no more intentional meddling with her life. You're going to accord her the respect she is due. And if we do, Dylan ventured, attempting some stubbornness. Marcus smiled, but the smile was not a friendly one. Then you'll learn that Kendra inherited more than a little bit of my willfulness, and you really wouldn't want to see what that entails. That evening, Dylan paced around his bedroom, Tyler and Connor sitting on his bed, the 3 of them still reeling from the parking lot exchange with Marcus Williams. Can you believe that guy? Gotten off school, voice growing an edge that made Connor jump. Is that no one threatens me, not some soldier wannabe security guard, and certainly not his disabled daughter. Dylan talked his way out of I want to send a message, because Tyler was staring like he'd seen a ghost in chemistry, and Connor wasn't even looking at me. Dad, I didn't ask you not to get involved, and I tried to let you have your way. Blending frustration with knowledge. Dad, you can't threaten teenagers. You know that, right? I didn't threaten anyone. I just told them. What was going on? How did they respond? Marcus hesitated. They were concerned. As they should be in the moment. Be there to public. Dylan answered. Too many adults present. We need something more private. What about the parking lot again? Connor proposed. After school. When everyone has left. No. That's where her dad caught us. Too obvious. Dylan had been pacing, a slow smile creeping onto his face. I've got a better idea, Tyler. And Connor stood waiting, knowing the look, which generally led up to Dylan's most elaborate plans. You know how she always stays. After of his best friends, my dad gives more money to this school than half the rest of the parents put together, other than Tyler said. It'll be her word against ours, and we've already shown how much weight her word is worth around here. Who had been resting weight, their relaxed positioning, cut off the straight line to Zoe's car, compelling Kendra to either run into them or drive way around the parking lot. Well. Voice firm, despite the adrenaline starting to course through her body, regarding respect. Dylan responded regarding boundaries, regarding what occurs when individuals are unaware of their position. Zoe had her phone at hand, finger hovering on her emergency contacts. We don't want any trouble. Too late for that, Dylan said contentedly. Dylan said, his tone exuding a smugness that sent Kendra's skin crawling. Look, who's working late today? Just keep walking, Zoe grumbled and began forward, but Connor caught her arm. Stay back and observe. But this time, it was different. This time, Kendra was lying helpless on the chill asphalt, watching her mobility device being used like a toy, while she was unable to do anything to stop it. Look at her, Tyler shouted, pointing his phone camera at Kendra. Not so tough now, are you? Connor instructed her. Perhaps you'll pick up something. Tyler was already pulling out his telephone. This is going to be epic. But her tone betrayed her anxiety. Actually, Tyler said, stepping more into their path, we were hoping to have a little chat. Connor positioned, but are likely plotting revenge right now. The validity of her appraisal struck Marcus like a body blow. Dylan said, performing another. Really, both of you do. Kendra lay on the ground, feeling the cold asphalt against her cheek. Tasting meeting had lasted longer than expected, leaving Kendra and Zoe, one of the last groups of students, still in the building. As they walked to the parking lot, her tongue, while she fell, the humiliation swept over her, but beneath it something else was growing. Not helplessness, not despair, anger, pure, focused, contained anger that consumed all other feelings at a slow, deliberate rate. Kendra pressed her palms flat on the asphalt. The boys were too engrossed in their routine to see as she pushed down, using her core muscles the way her father had shown her. She moved herself up into a sitting position, the adrenaline that flowed through her veins making her feel invincible. Tyler saw first, his laughter freezing in his throat. Dylan, what? Dylan had called back, still in the wheelchair. Look. Dylan turned to find Kendra gradually, slowly getting up to her feet. The movement slow, controlled her balance. Sure. Despite the ache in her shoulder, she stood up straight, wiping dirt from her hands, her dark eyes locked on Dylan with an intensity that made him stop. Wheeling the parking lot was totally silent. What the hell? Connor had breathed. You've been faking it, Dylan accused. Only a few cars were left scattered across the broad expanse of asphalt. Zoe, as Honda, was parked in its usual location by the accessible parking area, while a few teacher cars were clustered by the main entrance. When they noticed them, Dylan, Tyler, and Connor came out from behind. Already caught up with us when Daddy acted tough guy in the parking lot. Dylan moved closer to Kendra's wheelchair, Here is what is going to happen. You are going to get out of that chair right now, so we can have some fun with it again." No, the single word lingered in the air. With surprising authority, Dylan blinked, as if he hadn't quite heard properly. "I said no." "I don't think you realize the situation here," Tyler said, taking a step closer. "You don't get to." "Say no, get out of the chair," Dylan demanded, grabbing for her arm. "Now, do touch me." In his need to defend his daughter, he could have made things infinitely worse. Earlier in Dylan's room, the strategy session had escalated to the level now. What were you thinking? Something memorable. Something that'll be remembered for the rest of the school year. Something that makes it absolutely crystal clear. Who's in charge around here? Connor looked from his two friends, acknowledging that they'd decrossed from carefree cruelty into far darker territory. "Guys, I don't know about this. What if we get busted?" "We won't get busted," Dylan said with a war briefing. Tyler had opened the school calendar on his phone. "Looking for opportunities. Winter formal next Friday," he said. "Everyone has gone naughty Thursdays for that stupid debate club meeting." "Yeah, so. She is always one of the last ones to leave, usually just her and that friend of hers. What's her name? Zoe." Parking lots practically empty by then. Connor felt his stomach clench. "Dylan, what are you thinking?" "I am thinking it's time for Princess Wheels to know what happens when Daddy can't shield her, when there ain't nobody around to see her get humiliated." "Dude, that sounds like justice," Dylan cut in. "She thinks she is so tough sitting there in her chair offering us attitude. Her dad believes he can scare us into retreating. Time to teach them both how mistaken they are." Tyler was hissing in agreement. "Absolute sureness. And even if we did, what are they going to do? Kick out the star linebacker?" And to Dylan's smile, the look cold and calculating. "Thursday can't come soon enough." Thursday afternoon rolled in with deceptive normalcy. The debate club large SUV moving with the methodical precision of predators himself to shut off their withdrawal towards the school building, finishing the trap. Unlike during their past encounters, there was no pretense of accidental meeting this time. This was intentional, planned, and isolated discussion regarding what Kendra inquired her. Tyler explained trouble. Kendra warned, her voice dropping to a deadly hush. But Dylan was past listening. Months of unrestrained rage and his father's showdown had come to this moment. He seized Kendra's arm and jerked hard, dragging her forward out of the wheelchair. The force of it sent Kendra crashing to the asphalt, her body thudding onto the pavement with a revolting crunch that resounded through the deserted parking lot. Agony flashed through her shoulder and hip, where she landed on the pavement, and for an instant she remained motionless, shocked by the force of it. "There we go. Into her wheelchair. A lot better." Zoe screamed. "You can't do that to her. Princess on the ground, where she belongs." Dylan started wheeling round in circles, laughing as he did the same wheelies and TRX they'd done months before. "Please," Zoe begged, tears in her eyes. "She needs that chair. She needs to find her place." "Blood from having bitten," his voice breaking. "This the entire time? You've lied." Kendra stepped forward, and then again, her movements cautious, but irrevocably true. "I haven't been pretending," she whispered. "I've been healing. Give me back my chair." She went on, her voice holding a new authority which none of them had previously heard. Now Dylan's face contorted in anger. "You don't deserve it. You've been pretending to be victim when you could walk all along." "Last chance," Kendra said, stepping forward again. "Give it back, or else." Dylan laughed. "But it wasn't funny. Consequences from you." He leapt out of the wheelchair and pushed it away, sending it rolling around the parking lot. "Let us see how strong you are when we put you on your feet again." The three boys started forward, and Kendra knew her moment of truth had finally come. The three boys stood in a loose semicircle round Kendra, their initial shock replaced by calculating hostility. Dylan worked his hands, Tyler cracked his knuckles, and Connor positioned himself like a boxer, anticipating a fight. You think standing up makes you some kind of tough guy. Dylan sneered, but his voice had an edge of doubt. You're still just a crippled girl who has been lying to everyone. Kendra didn't say a thing, her breathing even as she evaluated the situation. Three opponents, all bigger than her, all believing in their physical advantage. The parking lot lay empty around them, no witnesses, other than Zoe, who remained frozen with her phone gripped and shaking hands. Dylan, maybe we should just, Connor began, but Dylan stopped him with a harsh movement. No, she embarrassed us in front of the entire school with her fake victim routine time. She saw what actual consequences were. Tyler made the first move, stumbling forward to grab Kendra's arm, but something went wrong. Instead of taking a step back or attempting to get away, Kendra shifted her weight and turned, using Tyler's force against him. He stumbled past her off balance and disoriented Wood. The Tyler spun around, red-faced with embarrassment and rage. She caught a break that's all. But Kendra had changed her stance. Her feet were shoulder-width apart, her center of gravity low, her arms up in a defensive stance that spoke volumes of years of training. She was less of a victim now and more of someone who knew precisely what was going to occur last. Warning, she warned, her voice steady amidst the tension that crackled in the air. Walk away now and this will all be over. Dylan laughed, but it came out strained. Walk away from you? I don't think so. He gave Connor a nod, who stepped around to flank Kendra on the left while Tyler shifted himself around to the right. Classic pack dynamics. Surround the target, overwhelm with numbers, intimidate, and take advantage of superior bulk. Zoe discovered, her voice finally. Stop it, all of you. Just stop. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Dylan continued, not even glancing away from Kendra. By the time they arrive, this will all be finished, and it'll be our word against yours. Tyler chimed in, 3 honor students against a girl who'd been pretending to have a disability for months. Connor hesitated, something about Kendra's stance provoking a sense that told him this was not going to go as planned. Guys, I really think we should. You think too much, snapped Dylan. Just grab her. But as Connor made progress, Kendra did something that none of them had anticipated. She smiled. It was not a friendly smile, or a nervous one, or even a defiant one. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for such a moment, who had been training for it over months of pain and frustration and tightly held anger. My father always said to me, she told them chattily, as though they were talking about the weather, that the biggest blunder bullies make is to suppose that their victims will remain victims indefinitely. Dylan felt a shiver run down his spine, but his pride wouldn't allow him to back down now, not in front of his friends, not after all they'd invested in proving to break this girl. Your father's not here to watch out for you now, he said, attempting to put confidence into his voice. I don't need him to watch out for me. Kendra said, he already showed me everything I need to know. Tyler aired by taking her words for hollow bravado. He charged again, this time committing fully to throwing her to the ground. But Kendra was prepared. She ducked out of the way. At the last moment, her motion economical and precise, then swept Tyler's legs as he brushed past him. He fell asphalt hard, the shock propelling the breath from his lungs. With a jagged gasp, Connor stilled his eyes, wide with incredulity. How did she shut up and assist me? Dylan ordered, but his voice broke a little. This wasn't how things were meant to go. They were meant to be in charge, meant to be the ones dishing out lessons. Zoe, while had gotten beyond her initial freeze and was desperately working her phone, but instead of calling the authorities, she was recording her hands steadying out as she understood what she was seeing. Dylan and Connor approached more slowly now, having witnessed what happened to Tyler, who remained on the ground, holding his ribs and gasping for air. 2-against-1. Dylan said, attempting to assure himself, as well as Kendra, even if you do know some karate tricks, you can't handle both of us. Kendra's posture shifted once again, her weight redistributing in ways that indicated she was anything but done. You want to test that hypothesis. The challenge hung between them, and for the first time since this confrontation started, Dylan felt a spark of true fear, not fear of losing a fight, but fear of what that defeat would mean for his reputation, his status, his carefully built identity as a man who was above reproach. Connor, he said softly, when I say go, we both charge her at once. Connor nodded reluctantly, although every instinct within him screamed at him to flee. Kendra overheard the muttered plan and felt the characteristic calm that had always come before her best martial arts performances. Her father's voice resonated in her mind. When you Ray outnumbered, make them come to you, control the engagement. She was prepared. Go, Dylan yelled. He and Connor poured forward together, their strategy uncomplicated, yet efficient, overwhelm her with sheer numbers and strength. Dylan shot high, targeting her shoulders to bring her down, whereas Connor went low, attempting to take out her legs. But Kendra had been training for precisely this situation through months of training alongside her father, so she stepped back and turned left, using Dylan's momentum to send him past her while at the same time bringing her knee up into Connor's solar plexus as he dove low. Connor doubled over, gasping for breath, while Dylan spun around in anger. You little, he began, but Kendra interrupted him. Is that all you've got? She asked, her voice unshaken even though her heart rate was higher. 3 years of varsity football, and you can't get your hands on one girl who has been in a wheelchair for 6 months. The insult struck home. Dylan's face flushed red with anger and shame. He glanced around at his friends. Tyler still lying on the ground, clutching his ribs. Connor doubled up, struggling to catch his breath, and realized that all that he thought he had learned about power dynamics was in ruins around him. You think you're so smart, he growled. Now, as the trio headed back towards the school building, Kendra steadily walking alongside her fetched wheelchair, the 3 boys following along behind like vanquished soldiers. Dylan at last realized this was more than losing a battle. He'd lost everything. The walk back to the school building was like a dream to Kendra, her adrenaline still pumping through her veins, her hands shaking slightly from the fight, but her strides firm and certain behind her. Dylan tended his bloodied nose, while Tyler and Connor hobbled along behind in defeated silence. Ms. Rodriguez took them straight to the front office, where the night custodians gazed in surprise at the odd parade. The fluorescent lights felt harsh after the dark parking lot, illuminating everything in stark relief. Mrs. Patterson, Ms. Rodriguez called to the secretary, who was about to close down for the day. I need you to call Principal Hayes right away, and we'll need to contact the parents of these 4 kids. Vice Principal Johnson came out of his office, having overheard the disturbance. His face at once changed to one of stifled annoyance when he noticed the group. What's going on here? He inquired, his voice implying that this was an unwelcome disturbance to his evening routine. There was a fight in the parking lot, Ms. Rodriguez answered. Miss Martinez has it recorded. Johnson's eyes flicked to Zoe's phone, and Kendra caught a flash of concern. cross his features. I am sure. It's just another misunderstanding, you know. How these things can get blown out of proportion. Show him, Ms. Rodriguez said to Zoe. As the video played, Johnson's expression grew increasingly uncomfortable. Kendra watched him carefully, noting how he winced when Dylan yanked her from the wheelchair, or how his jaw tightened when the boys advanced on her. Well, Johnson said when it ended, his voice carefully neutral. This is certainly unfortunate, but it looks like Miss Williams handled herself quite well. No real harm done. No real harm done. Ms. Rodriguez's voice rose in disbelief. They attacked her now. Let us not get dramatic. These are good kids who were carried away. I am sure we can resolve this with an easy disciplinary meeting. The door to the office burst open, and Principal Hayes strode in, his face already severe from Ms. Rodriguez's frantic phone call. He was a tall, gaunt man who'd been principal for 15 years and took pride in knowing everything that went on in his school. Whereas this video, I need to see, he demanded curtly. Johnson hurried forward. Principal Hayes, I believe we can deal with this episode without. Show me the video. Hayes interrupted him, his tone non-negotiable. As Hayes observed the video, his face darkening with every second. When Dylan pulled Kendra from her wheelchair, Hayes' fists clenched tight. When the boys mocked her for pretending to be disabled, his face red with rage. This is unacceptable, he exclaimed when it stopped. Utterly unacceptable, sir, Johnson said. I believe if we approach this objectively, it is honestly just a matter of teenage feelings running wild. These boys have outstanding records. Good records. Hayes looked at his vice principal with not very masked anger. Mr. Johnson, are you telling me this is the first time you've had to handle complaints of these students bullying? Miss Williams, the silence in the room was oppressive. Johnson's face paled as he saw the trap he'd fallen into. Well, yeah, there have been a few minor incidents, but nothing which rose to the level of minor incidents. Kendra finally broke the silence. I reported them for stealing my wheelchair months ago. You said it was just boys being boys. Hayes' focus shifted to Kendra and back to Johnson. You've been covering something up. I wasn't covering anything up, Johnson retorted defensively. I was dealing with normal teenage drama in the proper channels by giving it the silent treatment. Ms. Rodriguez continued. I attempted to report some harassment I saw in my classroom. You dissuaded me from making it official. Hayes appeared to be struggling to comprehend what he was hearing. How long has this been happening? Months. Kendra spoke softly. I began here, and it has been building up since. They knew nothing would be done to them. 20 minutes. Afterward, parents started arriving. Kendra's parents arrived first. Nia's professional demeanor cracking as she caught sight of her daughter's ripped jacket and scraped hands. Are you hurt? She inquired on the spot, inspecting Kendra for wounds. I'm all right, Mom. Seriously? Behind them, Marcus stood, his face impassive, as he took in the tableau, his daughter upright and unharmed, 3 boys defeated looking, and 2 administrators obviously at odds. Mr. Williams, Principal Hayes said cautiously, I want to reassure you that we're treating this incident very seriously. I am also discovering that there could have been systemic failures in how past complaints were addressed. Johnson fidgeted uncomfortably as Dylan's parents came. His father, a big man in a pricey suit, who instantly started making demands. This is clearly a case of self-defense. Dylan's father shouted loudly, my son was attacked. Mr. Reeves, Hayes cut, and I think you should watch this video before you say another word. As the parents viewed the tape, the tension in the room mounted. Dylan's mother gasped. Tyler's father muttered a curse under his breath. Connor's mom glared in stunned horror. This is assault, Hayes declared when it was finished on a student my administration evidently failed to keep safe. Johnson attempted one final sidestep. Now let us not jump to conclusions. These are good kids. Who did something wrong stop talking. Hayes ordered, his voice slicing through the room like a knife. You're finished dealing with this situation. You're finished dealing with any situation involving the safety of students. The weight of those words came down on all of them. Johnson's face blanched as he understood his career was essentially ruined. About this issue will be brought to the school board. Straight away, Hayes went on, and we'll be calling the police. Miss Williams, I apologize to you. Something that I can never properly convey. Kendra nodded with an odd feeling of vindication as she saw the system that had wronged her finally admit its error. Justice, so it seemed, had finally come. About 3 weeks afterwards, Kendra made her way through the corridors of Cedar Ridge High School with the confidence that shone through in each stride. She still employed her wheelchair when she required it for longer distances or when she became tired, but now the decision was hers, not dictated by limitation or fear. The makeover had been stunning. The video had become viral within a few hours and brought national scrutiny to the handling of disability harassment by the school. Justice for Kendra had trended for days, evoking discussions on bullying, disability rights, and institutional accountability throughout the country. The newly approved anti-harassment policy was voted in last night, Zoe explained, as they sat at Kendra's locker. My mom told me the school board meeting was full. Good, Kendra said, taking out her chemistry textbook. Perhaps some actual changes will take hold for once. The fallout had been quick and all-encompassing. Dylan, Tyler, and Connor had been expelled and charged with assault that would dog them to any school they attempted to enroll. Vice Principal Johnson had been fired outright, his 20-year tenure coming to an end in ignominy. Principal Hayes had made dramatic policy shifts and brought in an independent consultant to assess the whole way the school was doing student safety. How does it feel? Zoe asked on their way to class. How does what feel being the girl who changed everything? Kendra thought about the question around them. Students navigated the hallways with a new energy than they had prior to. There was more awareness, more respect, more understanding that actions had consequences. Teachers were more cautious, administrators more responsive, and students more inclined to speak up when they saw harassment. It feels like I can breathe now, she told. Ms. Rodriguez had been promoted to vice principal, her first act being the creation of a student advocacy program. She waved at them from her new office, a warm smile spreading across her face. Miss Williams, she shouted over the telephone. The reporter from Channel 7 confirmed your interview for this afternoon. Are you ready? Kendra nodded. She'd become something of a reluctant spokesperson for disability rights, fielding interview requests from across the country. The attention was overwhelming sometimes, but she understood the importance of her story, reaching other students who might be enduring silently. At lunch, Kendra ate with a crowd that had expanded significantly in recent weeks. Students who had once been reluctant to be friends with her now sought her out, attracted by her courage and honesty. But it was the note in her backpack that touched her most. Read it again, Zoe encouraged. Kendra drew out the handwritten letter from a middle school student in Texas whose video message had gone viral. As a response to hers, the girl had been dealing with similar bullying and had taken inspiration from Kendra's courage to stand up to her own administration. Dear Kendra, she read out loud, thanks to you, I discovered my voice. Thanks to you, I am not hiding anymore. Thanks to you, 3 bullies at my school are in trouble for the first time. Thank you for teaching me that we don't have to remain victims. We can become warriors. That's letter number 15 this week, Zoe noticed. I know it's amazing after school. Kendra discovered her parents standing in the parking lot, the same parking lot where everything had transformed 3 weeks before. But instead of being a source of trauma, it had become a reminder of her change. How was the interview, Marcus asked, as she got close. Good. The reporter posed hard questions, but fair ones. Word from the college scouts. Nia asked Kendra's newfound celebrity had gotten attention from adaptive sports programs. Nationwide, 3 universities had already contacted her regarding martial arts scholarships for recognizing not only her physical capabilities, but also her character and drive. Virginia Tech called this morning, Kendra said with a grin. They want to fly me in for a campus visit. As they headed home, Kendra looked back on the journey that had led her to this place. 6 months previous, she'd been shattered physically, emotionally, spiritually. The accident had taken so much from her, and the bullying had tried to take even more. But sitting here in this moment, stronger than ever before, surrounded by family that loved her and friends that respected her, she understood something powerful. She hadn't just survived her struggles, she'd taken what they were and made them purpose. You know, she said, as they drove into their driveway, I used to think the accident was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And now, Marcus asked, now I believe it was the thing that taught me who I truly am. That night, as Kendra worked her way through her physical therapy exercises in the garage, she caught a glimpse of herself. In the mirror, she saw a woman who had been dealt impossible circumstances and had overcome them. A woman who had taken victimhood and turned it into activism, pain into purpose, silence into strength. She was Kendra Williams. She was a survivor, a warrior, and a voice for those yet to find their own. And she was where she was meant to be, standing tall, telling the truth, and proving that at times the greatest answer to cruelty is just not to be broken by it. The girl who was once defined by her wheelchair now defined herself by her indomitable spirit. I hope you liked that story. Please like this video and subscribe so that you do not miss the next one. Meanwhile, I have personally selected 2 stories for you that I think you will like. Have a great day.